الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الحدي حدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, truly touched with the brothers' invite today and all of you respected and blessed brothers to attend today, to listen to a reminder to myself and to the rest of you brothers about those individuals, those personalities that concern us the most as Muslims. As we find in numerous ahadith, خير الناس قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best generation is my generation, and then the people that come after that generation, and the following generation. So the people that we aspire to look up to are those individuals. That is what is known as Qurunun Mufaddala, the preferred generation that every single Muslim looks back at them. The most prime of the ulama, the most prime of the fuqaha, the most prime of all of the individuals came during that time. And amongst those prime individuals we find none other than Al-Rijal Hawla Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or Rijal Hawla Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the men, and obviously the women around the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Before we enter into the life of this personality, this individual, we should all be crystal clear that the best personality is none other than the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was the influence of the character, the conduct, the behavior which influence and change these individuals to become those best individuals, those personalities that we all look up to. As the Quran mentions, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. So Surah Al-Ahzab, the 33rd chapter of the Quran. Indeed, for you to emulate and to copy the Prophet Muhammad is the best character, the best conduct. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day and remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly. So the Prophet Muhammad is our benchmark. He is the ideal personality and individual that every single Muslim should look up to in all of our affairs, to try to emulate him, to learn about his life, and more important, as many of the ulama have mentioned, that in reading of tafsir, reading of hadith, reading of fiqh, person reads seerah, reads about the blessed life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, your character is sublime, is manifest, is as the Quran describes the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, it describes him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. The end of Surah At-Tawbah, indeed, is come a messenger from amongst your own selves, one who is overwatching, who finds it burdensome, finds it difficult, troubles him, that you're not coming towards the guidance. He is full of mercy and pity, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are all ayat talking about the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, you find probably amongst the most strongest ayat inside the Quran, inside Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd chapter of the Quran, from verse 31 or so, that indeed you individuals, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ, you claim to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَاتَّبِعُونِي, follow me, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. And in return what will happen? Raddul fi'l, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love you and forgive you your sins. Wallahu ghafurur rahim. This, as Imam Al-Wahidi in his kitab Asbabun Nuzul mentions, this is ayah of ikhtibar, ayah of imtihan, ayah of examination, to see, do we really love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? If we really do we make ittiba' al-Rasul? Do we follow and emulate and imitate the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? People will come and go, personalities will come and go, but the crux of a Muslim is making ittiba' Rasul. That is what a person follows in their life. Whoever lives up to that, whoever expresses those words, those are the words that we follow. Ignore the individuals. follow and remember the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the Arab poet, he wrote the lines of poetry, لو كان حبك صادقا لأطعته إن المحب لمن يحب مطيع. If your love was truthful, indeed you will obey the one that you love. So the total obedience here amongst the creation belongs only to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, if another Arab poet, he wrote these lines of poetry, كل يدعي وصلا بليلى. Everybody claims to have a link with Layla, but Layla doesn't recognize any individual. Here Layla is just like Shakespeare that we find Romeo and Juliet. Layla is the Arab version, but Layla here isn't a woman. Layla here, according to his Arab poet, is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. كل يدعي وصلا بليلى. Everyone claims to love Layla, but Layla doesn't recognize any individual. So the Prophet Muhammad, all of us claim to love him, but for many of us, unfortunately, he may not recognize us. In our life, in our conduct, in our actions, in whatever we do, even the simple things of wudu that we find in perfecting one's wudu, that whoever does their wudu appropriately, that is the way we'll be recognized as being from amongst the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those bodily parts will begin to shine. So this was the personality that by his teachings and his conduct and his behavior, as we find in the hadith of Muwatta Imam Malik, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Indeed, I've been sent to perfect the noble character and behavior. Ulama of hadith, they mentioned as if this was the prime concern. This was the only reason that the Prophet Muhammad was sent, to teach us how to behave and to conduct ourselves. So that personality, those ethics, those etiquettes, those behaviors, they change those individuals around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Abdullah ibn Mas'ud mentioned, that everything about Islam has been selected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked at all of the earth and selected the land of Mecca to be the final place of revelation. They looked at the hearts of all of the human beings and chose that the Prophet Muhammad is going to be the final messenger. And then from there looked at the hearts of the rest of mankind and selected those men and women to be with the Prophet Muhammad. Sometimes we may think, why were we not there? The answer is quite simple, that all of us will probably turn back on our heels and turn into a life of kufr. No one should be full of the iman and think that iman is strong and powerful. Those individuals were selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be around the Prophet Muhammad. If it was to be us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have turned the time around or changed that and placed us in that time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that these individuals, they are min al-mu'minina rijalun sadaqu ma ahadu Allahi alayhi faminhum man qada nahbahu وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. These are men, مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ رِجَالٌ, amongst the believers, men who remain true to their covenant towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of them have been lifted, some of them are still waiting. وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. But these men, they never change. Their desire and their yearn and their focus to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always at a maximum level. As for some of us, at times the level goes up, sometimes it goes down. Today maybe thinking about iman, we go out the doors thinking about kufr, the next day is this, next day is that. But those individuals, they were selected, they were prestige. So that's after reading about the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, we should read about the lives of these individuals. They become our role models. Today people look at all types of individuals, icons, symbols, whatever it may be, celebrities, even the junk around us, even myself, memorized what players play for what team, who got transferred where, what's happening where, without even paying any attention. And many of the youth, they begin to look up to some of these individuals who are uneducated, who are probably just good with their feet, don't know how to speak, how to conduct themselves, whatever it may be. Who are the role models for us Muslims? As Muslims begin to aspire to become those individuals and begin to, as they say, dream about those individuals or living a life with those individuals. So these individuals have been selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should take moments in our life to read about their seerah, to see what made them so prestigious, what made them to become so selected. And as this individual that we want to study and shed some light about his characteristics and his behavior to help us understand. Because we find there's always different types of companions, those who are soft, those who are lenient, those who are harsh, those who are rough. And likewise those who come from extreme jahiliyyah and come towards Islam and possibly living in the West, that many young Muslims unfortunately live a life of extreme jahiliyyah, and then somewhere along the line they begin to discover Islam. And as a side point, that should be very abnormal. Most Muslims today think that should be the normal way of life. That is not a normal life of a Muslim. A normal life of Muslims to abstain themselves from haram. It is normal for a Muslim to be away from haram. It was very rare when many of us were growing up that a person would get involved in haram. Very, very rare. But today it's become the norm that many people live a life of haram and eventually they come into the halal. And we need to turn it around.
There's nothing special about living a life of jahiliyyah, a life of kufr, of fusuq, of disobedience. That should not be the normal. أخرجوا آل لوط من قريتكم إنهم أناس يتطهرون. Get rid of the people of Lut. They are people who want to be purified. The way of us Muslims is to take our people back to purity. Everything about them should be pure. Purifying their eyes, their heart, their mind, their soul, their belief, their action, everything. That should be normal. We shouldn't get involved in the wider world around us, that people begin to show this is the normal way a Muslim should live their life. Quran mentions قُلْ لَا يَسْتَوِي الْخَبِيثُ وَالطَّيِّبُ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Oh, the good things and the bad things are never the same. وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ. Even though the impure substances may glitter, may begin to dazzle, begin to shine, they begin to allure you towards haram. But the mu'min, the believer with his heart seems to recognize it's going to snatch my iman away. It's going to take me away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never can they be the same. So we shouldn't be so focused upon those individuals, or many of us living a life of jahiliyyah. Rather, we should try to change the tide and bring people to live a pure life and to remain pure throughout their lives. However, this individual was one of those individuals who lived that life to maybe to highlight and to teach us that there's still khair, there's still goodness. As he himself, he mentioned, Umar Al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, whoever hasn't seen extreme jahiliyyah cannot really appreciate Islam. So some of us may be born Muslims and Islam is right in front of us, and we think that the grass is green on the other side, or we look towards these individuals and we don't really appreciate it. And thus we find many of our brothers who've come from a different lifestyle or being non-Muslims, they begin to appreciate Islam a lot more. A lot more. They begin to show a love for the sunnah, a love of the life of emulating, copying and living their life, because they've seen extreme ignorance, that they know that they were lost. And they begin to feel sad for many of us being born Muslims, and we begin to drift away from the teachings of Quran, the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this individual, you find it becomes to such a great level that you find that the Quran begins to come down in the favor of Umar ibn Khattab. In the hadith of Sahih Muslim that we find, and many of these hadiths we're going to quote, you can go back and read them yourself. Read Kitab, Fada'il al-Sahaba of Imam Bukhari, and Fada'il al-Sahaba inside Sahih Muslim. You go back to these two main textbooks, you'll find all these ahadith in general will be quoted inside there, and you find the virtues of all of the best companions being selected. So we can all inshallah go back. That's all of you guys, inshallah, your homework and my homework, to go back, inshallah, to read about the life of the companions from Sahih al-Bukhari and likewise from Sahih Muslim, and most of these ahadith will be placed there, inshallah. So this hadith inside Sahih Muslim that we find, that there were 3 separate occasions that the Quran came down upon the view of Umar ibn Khattab. So this shows his farasa, it shows his insight and his deep understanding of the affairs around him and the deep understanding of Islam. The first time that you find that the Quran came down in the favor of Umar ibn Khattab was when we find that the captives in the Battle of Badr, that the Prophet Muhammad consulted with Abu Bakr, and they said, we're going to set them free. So we've captured these individuals, these prisoners, we're going to set them free. Umar said we shouldn't do that on this occasion. On this occasion, we should execute them, to send out a strong message to the disbelievers and to the Quraysh, we mean serious business. What happened? The Quran came down in the favor of who? Of Umar al-Khattab, that these people, they should be executed. That's how the Quran came down, supporting the view of Umar al-Khattab. The second time you find the Quran came down in the favor of the view of Umar al-Khattab. The wives of the Prophet Muhammad never used to wear the hijab, complete hijab. So strange men would look at them, other companions would look at them, the munafiqun may look at them, whoever it may be may look at them, visualize them. Umar had this sense of shame and this feeling, how can these people look at the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, even though they're ummahat al-mu'mineen for them and for us as well, but it's such strange individuals. So what happened? Ayat of the Quran came down, telling the wives of the Prophet Muhammad to adorn themselves with their veil. So when our sisters today begin to debate and these modernistic views, who are they trying to follow in their lives? As we began with, we follow who? The Prophet Muhammad. And likewise, they follow in those affairs which are specific to women. Their role model should be who? The wives of the Prophet Muhammad. That should be their role model. Not the models, al-fawahishat, that we find around us, al-ariyat, kasiyat, dressed but yet nude individuals, or these modern trends of hijab that you find that don't exist in the Sharia, in any fuqaha. Dolce and Gabbana and Calvin Klein and Moschino and tight-fitting, revealing hijabs, revealing their bodily parts, showing their clothing, showing their feet, showing their whatever it may be. That's not the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of the fuqaha have allowed that type of hijab to be displayed. Their role model should be the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, how they used to dress, how they used to adorn themselves, how they used to conduct themselves. The third occasion that we find that Umar ibn Khattab mentioned, that the place of the maqam of Ibrahim, those of you may have returned back from Hajj, and may Allah bless your Hajj and accept your Hajj, that those individuals that you find praying behind maqam Ibrahim, that after performing the tawaf, Umar said it would be good that we pray 2 rak'ah of prayer behind the maqam of Ibrahim. What happened? The Quran came down, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. Take the maqam of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. So these are all feelings that Umar had, and the Quran came in his favor. Some of the ulama of tafsir or ulum al-Quran, like Imam Suyuti, has collected some 50 different occasions inside the Quran that the Quran comes upon the view in Umar al-Khattab, regarding the munafiq, Abdullah ibn Ubay as-Salul, regarding khamr, alcohol as well. Even though he may have drank before, he felt that this is something haram, that this needs to be prevented, needs to be stopped, and eventually the ayat came down saying that the drinking of alcohol is forbidden. So here we find that there are individuals, as we find, who are mulhamun, individuals from my ummah who will be spiritually inclined, meaning there will be any special blessings placed upon them. They have this intuition, this ability to recognize any certain things. Or there are people who are muhaddathun, any people who are able to understand certain perceptions of certain things. And this was given to Umar al-Khattab, that he had this deep understanding. And some of them even write in his seerah that even by reading the facial expressions of a person, they can dissect them, they can understand them. That was a blessing that was given to him. And possibly as you get more and more older, as you begin to see the youth, and you see their facial expression, or you see their dress sense, with their trousers hanging below their bottom, etc., you begin to understand what type of background that they come from. But that's part of life. The older you get, the more wisdom the person begins to gain, and experience of life. That's why many individuals, they may think that foolishness has been placed where? In the heart and minds of who? Young individuals. That's what it is. That's a reality. Many of us young individuals, there's foolishness in the way that we think and what we want to develop inside our life. So the person needs, you need the foolishness at times of the young individual, but at the same time you need the wisdom of people to understand the wider picture, to help us to work together to get to that final goal, inshallah. So even Umar al-Khattab, to such a degree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers can't hear at the back, I'm getting old, brothers, so what can I do? Start shouting? I try my best, inshallah, to raise my voice, inshallah. So even Umar, you find in a hadith in Sunnah Imam Tirmidhi, if I'm not mistaken, لو كان بعدي نبي لكان عمر الخطاب. If there was to be a prophet after me, it would have been Umar al-Khattab. If there was to be a prophet, that if there's any individual, not Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani or Elijah Muhammad or so and so, if there was supposed to be a prophet, it would have been Umar al-Khattab. But there is no prophet. La nabiyya ba'di. There will be no prophet after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But that shows his rank, that shows his dignity, that shows the immense respect that the Prophet Muhammad shows to him. Likewise, you find the Prophet Muhammad took his advice on many, many occasions. What comes to mind, if you look at once again Sahih Muslim, if you read Kitab al-Iman, the first book inside Sahih Muslim, you find many beautiful ahadith talking about Iman. In there you find this one hadith, whereby you find that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he follows one day the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam into a garden. So he says that I crouched down like a fox and I made my way through the garden, and at the other end of this hedge was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam there. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Abu Hurairah, he said yes, and then he gave me his blessed sandal. And he said that whoever you meet outside of this garden, give them the glad tidings of paradise. If they testify that none has the right to be worshipped except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I am the messenger of Allah, give them the glad tidings that they will have paradise. So Abu Hurairah, he took this sandal, and the meaning of the sandal is to show that he is a messenger from the messenger, from the Prophet Muhammad. So if a person signs their name and puts a stamp or seal there, and the person believes that this is from the king or from the queen or from whatever it may be, it's from them. So here, this is directly from the Prophet Muhammad giving this message. So on this occasion, Abu Hurairah, he comes out of the garden. On this occasion, as you may have heard previously, normally it would be Abu Bakr that would be met. But this occasion is Umar al-Khattab, something decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Umar sees Abu Hurairah standing with the blessed sandal of the Prophet Muhammad, and he meets now Umar, he says to Umar, because obviously no need to ask him, are you a believer? Everybody knows he's a Muslim. Gives him the glad tidings of paradise. So Umar doesn't say, Barakallahu feek, Jazakallah Khair, ticket to paradise, I'm on my way. You know what he does? He pushes him. He smacks him. And when Umar smacks someone, he smacks someone hard. فَسَقَطَ عَلَى إِسْتِهِ. He dropped on his bottom. tears began to swell out in his eyes, and he began to weep, and he began to cry. He said, listen, I'm giving you glad tidings in paradise, and you're smacking me. Imagine that today. Someone giving many of our brothers walk around thinking they are in paradise. They think they deserve paradise. What does the Quran say? فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Don't claim sanctity for yourself. Don't claim it for yourself. No one knows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows those who are the pious individuals. You read the works of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, you find some remarkable things that no two scholars of Ahlul Sunnah will ever debate about his rank. You read his Aqidah al-Tadburiyah, al-Hamawiyah, al-Wasatiyah, Kitab al-Iban. You read his works, what do you find? To the closing words. Go and study in great detail. He goes, Atamanna, I hope and I aspire to be amongst Firqatul Najiyah. I aspire to be Ta'ifatul Mansura. He doesn't say, I am it. And no two scholars of Ahlul Sunnah will ever debate that he was not one of the greatest sheikhs of Ahlul Sunnah. But yet he writes, he's humble, that I aspire to be amongst those individuals. And some of us, we think we are there. We think we're Ta'ifatul Mansura. We're the victorious group. There's no need to look at any other individual. No one knows what their ending is going to be. No one should be so full of themselves. Even in the life of Umar, you want to find some strange words about how he concluded about his own life. Anyhow, this debate went back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Abu Hurairah said, did you not send me to give glad tidings to the people? He said, yes, I did. So what happened, Abu Hurairah? Seeing him weeping, seeing him crying, what happened? He said, I went out and I met Umar, and I told him, and he smacked me. So now the Prophet asked him, why did you smack him? Why did you hit him? Why did you push him? He goes, the reason why I pushed him is people are going to be what? Allah yattakilu. People are going to become complacent and lazy. Just because I say La ilaha illallah, I'm definitely going to paradise. Look at Umar, how he understood it centuries ago. Today everybody says, oh, because I'll say the kalima when I die and I'll go into paradise. Nobody knows. Yes, it's true. Man kana akhira kalamihi la ilaha illallah, dakhla jannah. Whoever's final words are La ilaha illallah will enter into paradise. But you know, as a side point, can anyone guarantee that their final words are going to be La ilaha illallah? No one. The Quran mentions, يُثَبِّتُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِالْقَوْلِ الثَّابِتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ وَيُضِلُّ اللَّهُ الظَّالِمِينَ وَيَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ. Inside Surah Ibrahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes قَوْلُ الثَّابِت, makes a person live a life of affirmation on the true statement. Imam al-Sa'adi, one of the most famous mufassirin that we find of contemporary times, who passed away some 30 odd years ago, he mentions al-qawlu thabit is what? La ilaha illallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the person tawfiq and the ability to say that kalima when they're dying, if they lived according to it. As the Quran says, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. And he seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have knowledge that none has the right to be worshipped except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When some young brothers say, oh, what's the importance of studying Tawheed? We've studied Tawheed. That's it, we read all the books of Tawheed. Who said that you read all the books of Tawheed? You've only read a few books in English. Go and read Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah's An-Nuniyah. 3 volumes, each volume some 600 pages, shared by Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan. Anybody read that? When people say, well, bored of reading of Tawheed, of Aqidah. Imam al-Lakai's book on Shar' i'tiqad Ahlul Sunnah goes into many, many volumes. It's all there. But people somehow begin to think, I understand Tawheed, that's enough for me. Tawheed is throughout your life, throughout your journey. كُلُّ مَا زِدْتُ عِلْمًا زِدْتُ جَهْلًا. More I increase in my knowledge, more I increase in my ignorance. That the person, وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Man has only been given a small amount of knowledge. But the greatest knowledge man can gain is knowledge ma'rifatullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon knowledge. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ulama, who understand the rights and the regulations that belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understand the names and attributes, how to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what needs to be mentioned regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's in the beginning of Surah Al-Imran. It mentioned شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testifies that none has the right to be worshipped except for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then who? The angels. Then who? وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ. Men of understanding, men of knowledge. So that is the blessings of knowledge. The greatest knowledge is Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout our lives, that we strive to understand that, to become what? At-taqarrub ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet Muhammad accepted this advice. He didn't say, well, just carry on delivering the message. He accepted this advice and said that we will take this advice of Umar al-Khattab. Likewise, we find, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَعَلَ الْحَقِّ عَلَى لِسَانِ Umar وَقَلْبِهِ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the truth upon his tongue and in his heart. Upon his heart, upon the heart of Umar al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. That's that title you find, Al-Faruq, Al-Faruq carries the meaning of one who makes a distinction between Al-Haq wal-Batil, who separates the two. So thus he was given that title of being Al-Faruq, that he would make it crystal clear what his stance was. Some of the companions may have wavered in the sense of being hesitant in trying to present something or trying to say something. Umar is one of those individuals who was blunt. And that's why you find that if you look at the statement, Alasna al-Haq, are we not upon the truth? That he made that statement when he became a Muslim, that he went out and exposed himself to the Quraysh, didn't shy away from his Islam, to let them know that if we are upon the truth, then we need to teach these individuals and let them know that we are upon the truth. And thus you find, if you look at the story of his conversion, if you look at Surah Taha, inside Imam al-Bayhaqi's Dala'il al-Nubuwah, Surah Taha being the 20th Surah of the Quran, in there it mentions on verse 14 or so, and those are the ayat that he heard that inspired him, that traveled into his heart and made him become a Muslim. Thus you find the Mu'arrikhun, the historians, say, right, he was a person involved in Shadid al-Kufr, in immense Kufr he's involved inside. A notorious drinker, haram actions, whatever, maybe he used to carry them out inside his life. But yet there was still some khair. There's some goodness inside this individual, that had certain principles that they followed inside their life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him via the dua, the supplication of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who prayed that guide one of the two, either Umar al-Khattab, or we find Abu Jahl ibn Hisham, guide one of these two individuals towards Islam. So obviously here, what's the lesson that we learn here? Because some Muslims think that there's no khair in some of the disbelievers. Might be true about our friend Bush and Blair, etc. But there's still hope. If a person doesn't die, there's still a hope that a person could eventually turn towards Islam. How many individuals have we grown up with that we think that this person is like a devil, this person is shaitan, this person la khair fihi, no goodness inside that individual. Some years later you find them where? In the masjid. And you think, I can never believe that so-and-so has today become a Muslim. This person was so far away from Islam. Even you read the life, for example, of Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, that you find, you know what his nickname was? The Red Devil, Red Satan. They used to call him Satan. Shaitan was his name. That's what they used to call him. And that same individual becomes what? One of those individuals, that personalities that even today, non-Muslims look up to him. Non-Muslims read about his life. So no one should seal anybody's coffin, seeing a person doing haram actions, or young Muslims begin to say, فَهُوَ فَاسِقْ, فَهُوَ كَافِرْ, فَهُوَ مُجْرِمْ, فَهُوَ ظَالِمْ. It's not the way for a Muslim. If you see a person even committing haram, it's not for us to conclude this person definitely, he's a disbeliever, he's definitely this, he's definitely that. When we say actions of kufr, anybody has an action of kufr, فَلَا تَحْكُمْ عَلَى كُفْرِهِ بِأَنَّهُ كَافِرٌ. That's a principle. Read the works of Ibn Taymiyyah. Every single action of kufr does not make you and claim that that person is a disbeliever. So when we say this is amal kufri, is an action of kufr, it doesn't mean the person doing the action is a kafir. That should be crystal clear, because many young brothers, they jump the gun. They say he's doing an action of kufr, he's doing an action of disbelief, فَهُوَ kafir. So he's a disbeliever. He's not a disbeliever. Aslul Muslim annahu Muslim. The essence of a Muslim is he or she is a Muslim. Wa aslul kafir annahu kafir. The essence of a disbeliever is he is a disbeliever. فَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي كُفْرِهِ فَهُوَ kafir. Whoever doubts about what disbeliever being a disbeliever becomes what? A disbeliever. Don't twist it around. Don't throw it upon a Muslim and say, well, I saw the Muslim doing this, or he made this statement, or he done this action, that now he's a disbeliever. That's not for us to do. Every single Muslim should know the limitations. To not go beyond the limitations and become quick to say about another Muslim, he's a disbeliever, or he's a hypocrite, or he's going to the hellfire, he's going to be punished, whatever it may be. That's not for a Muslim. In the Hadith Qudsi that we find, who is the one that swears by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Wallahi, inna Allah la yaghfiru fulan. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will not forgive so-and-so individual. You know the Hadith Qudsi states, Man yata'alla alayya, who is taking an oath by my name? Hadith Qudsi, words of the Prophet going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's taking an oath by my name? Indeed, I've forgiven so-and-so, and I've wiped out your actions. So it's very, very dangerous. Very simple for Muslims to say things about another Muslim, but it's very dangerous. It can make all of your actions become null and void and take you away, drift you away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should be vigilant about that. So this extreme ignorance that he saw at the age of about 27, and he saw the extreme light of Islam. And I'm sure that most of you are aware that when he heard these ayat being recited by one of the companions, and he came and he went forth towards his sister, etc., and then he accidentally pushed, or he hurt her, and he saw the blood or whatever it may be in her face, and that touched his heart. Because even though they were notorious individuals, there were certain principles that never used to hit women. So that made him feel, and begin to think that I've just harmed my own sister that began to make him become sober and begin to think. And then those ayat, as we mentioned at Surah Taha, if you go back and you study Surah Taha, the 20th chapter to verse number 14 or so, Innani an Allah la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqimis salata li dhikri. Indeed, I am the one and only. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established a prayer for my dhikr, as Imam al-Bayhaqi in his Dalail al-Nubuwwah mentioned. These are the ayat that touched the heart of Umar ibn Khattab. So thus he went out, as we mentioned, and began to state to the Prophet Muhammad, Alasna al-haq, are we not upon the truth? Why should we begin to hide our faith? Why should we conceal our faith? That's the companions. And when Umar ibn Khattab, when he became a Muslim, they were so happy. You know, some of the companions, they were weak in a sense, they never had no prestige, they weren't from good families or had wealth or whatever it may be. So when he became a Muslim, they said we began to excel in Islam. That's our role should be as Muslims. That those celebrities or those good individuals inside society, whatever it may be, our role is to give them da'wah. Because sometimes people look up to those individuals. And those people who come up, who may be strong in Jahiliyyah, strong in whatever it may be, that they become strong personalities in delivering the message of Islam. And even you look at the lives of brothers, my eye caught the cat, Muhammad Ali. You read about Muhammad Ali's life as well. What happened to him? What did he do? He gave up. He gave up the heavyweight world title boxing title. He gave it up. Why? Because they went to send him to Vietnam to fight against the Vietnamese. He said, I haven't got no quarrel with the Vietnamese people. They never done nothing to me. So they said, if you don't go and fight inside the Vietnam War, we'll take away the heavyweight belt from you. What did he do? Took it off and gave it to them. Take it. Today we find sports personalities or people, whatever. We have no principles. We don't care. Obviously he came back and he set the record straight who the real champ was. And now we have Joe Frazier who's left the world, isn't it? Huh? Maybe the punishment he took, huh? So hijratuhu, as for, if you see the life of Umar, when he decided to announce his faith and to show his faith. So when some of the companions were performing the hijrah, if not all the companions secretly leaving in the night, even the Prophet left in secrecy, if you recall the seerah. But what did Umar al-Khattab do? He came out to the people and he said to the whole of the Quraysh, I'm making hijrah. If anybody wants to stop me, come and stop me. Whoever wants their mother to lose them, whoever wants their children to become orphans, whoever wants their wife to become a widow, then come and meet me on the other side of this valley. فَمَا تَبِعُوا أَحَدٍ. You know what happened? No one followed him. No one dared come and trouble Umar. So he announced, I'm going, do whatever you want to do. Everybody else has left secretly, even the Prophet Muhammad, he's left. Thus you find that the Prophet mentioned about him, that even the shaitan crosses over the road. Even that doesn't mean that he's infallible, as Ibn Hajar mentioned. It just shows that the strength of Umar is such that shaitan, if he comes in his way, he'll cross the road and go to the other side. That's why shaitan comes over on our side and sticks on our side, doesn't he? He doesn't cross over to the other side. So that's the strength of Umar. That even when he walked into a gathering, that you find that the women, they'll walk out their way. The wives of the Prophet would get out of their way. They would be scared, go behind the veil, go behind the curtain. Unlike today that we find sisters coming, laughing, joking, talking to us. How dare they have the audacity? They should talk that very clear that when men walk into the room, they should walk out the way. That's not the cultural practice. But because we don't give the right message, we give a wishy-washy message out to people, so everyone thinks we can just come and engage and discuss and whatever it may be. No. All this palaver that you find, facade and Facebook and internet and MSN, even under Islamic disguise and Islamic work or whatever we find. It really, so much facade, so much corruption that we find. Talking to one another, discussing one another. Where in the Sharia is this allowed? In the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. هذا عين الخلوة. This is the essence of khalwa. What is khalwa? Khalwa is to be intimate with a strange woman who is not related to you. فَبِاللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Sitting on the internet on a screen, speaking to a woman on a screen, what is that? Oh no, that's not khalwa, Sheikh. That's not khalwa. Then what is it then? What does that mean? Speaking to a woman who is not related to you, talking to her, engaging messengers, not allowed inside the Sharia. And that's why Umar is one of those individuals. When he walked in, they knew what to do. That even the Prophet began to laugh. That you're not scared about me, you're not scared about Abu Bakr, but when he comes, you're scared about him. And that's the balance we need to create once again inside our society. That people should know their role and their conduct and their behavior, and some of us should try to emulate those individuals, so they begin to think that these are the practices and this is the way that we live our life in emulating in these blessed individuals. Likewise, you find that amongst his fada'il, if you go back once again, as I mentioned, Kitab Sahih Bukhari, that we find his fada'il are numerous that I mentioned. The virtues of Umar al-Khattab, that the Prophet Muhammad, when he made that night journey, he saw this great big palace. And it shows the ghairah of Umar al-Khattab. Great big palace. Prophet Muhammad sees it in paradise, and he comes outside the gates of the house, the palace, and he wants to enter. There's a woman there who's outside the fountain, etc., if I'm not mistaken. And he asks that, whose house is this? And she says, this is the house of Al-Khattab. So the Prophet Muhammad said, I want you to enter into the house, but I know your sense of ghira. And ghira here means that the person cares about their family members. That's what you find in the hadith, Ad-Dayyuth la yadkhulul Jannah. Ad-Dayyuth will not enter into paradise. It was asked, what is the meaning of Dayyuth? Dayyuth is a man who doesn't care how his mother dresses, how his sister dresses, who his wife speaks to, how his daughter is, or what happens inside society. He can't care less about the women folk. That's known as a Dayyuth in the Sharia. What Dayyuth la yadkhulul Jannah. A man who doesn't take care of his women folk will not enter into paradise. So the Prophet Muhammad said that I felt the ghira, I know the ghira that you have, the sense of shame, meaning I don't want to enter into your house because your women folk could be there. This is the Prophet Muhammad. Umar says that, Alayka ughar, Ya Rasulullah, can I have that ghira regarding you? You're the Messenger of Allah. You're free to enter my palace whenever you want. You don't need to have my permission. Yes, anybody else may need my permission, but you can enter, you can come and go as much as you want. So this is the palace that's given to Umar al-Khattab, inside Jannah. Likewise, you find that many dreams were visualized about Umar al-Khattab that we find. Amongst those dreams that we find is the milk flowing from the fingertips. That was a sign of what ilm, that Umar al-Khattab has been given excessive knowledge and understanding has been given to him. Likewise, inside another dream in Sahih Bukhari that we find, that he's seen with a long garment. His garment is trailing. Some people try to come and use it as an evidence. Oh look, your lower garment can be trailing below your ankles. Remember, in the world of dreams, you don't apply dreams to this dunya. You don't make hukum from a dream onto this dunya. The meaning of the dream of his lower garment is trailing is a sign of ilm. Immense knowledge has been given to Umar. So it's got nothing to do with what he's wearing. And people use as a judgment, you can have your lower garment trailing below your ankles, etc. It's got nothing to do with that. The meaning of his dream is that excessive knowledge has been given to Umar al-Khattab. Another dream that we find, the Prophet Muhammad sees that Abu Bakr is pulling a bucket. وَفِيهِ ضَعْفٌ, and there's some weakness inside him pulling out the bucket. But when Umar al-Khattab, he pulls out the bucket, there's great strength. What's the interpretation of this dream? That at the time of Abu Bakr, there was going to be some weakness in his khilafah. He's only going to reign for a short while. As for Umar al-Khattab, it's going to be the golden years. The golden years in Islam are the time of Umar al-Khattab. Those are the best years of the Islamic empire that we find in Umar al-Khattab. He became the Amir al-Mu'mineen that we find. So all this is ishara about the khilafah of the coming of Abu Bakr, and then we find the khilafah of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Likewise, we find Buhurul Islam from the 13th year of the Islamic calendar to about 23rd year, that we find these are the best years of Islam, that the Islam has developed and flourished to such a degree during the reign of Amirul Mu'mineen. And thus we find this title, Amirul Mu'mineen, not like today that we find Amirul Mu'mineen of this, that, and the other state and nation and country, whatever we find. I'm still searching for that. Still, that's what gets me into much trouble at times, being a rebel. Still don't understand where did kingdomship come in Islam. Still searching to this day. And then people try to attach themselves that we are Amirul Mu'mineen. The real Amirul Mu'mineen was who? Was Umar al-Khattab. Go and read about how he was. Because the Amir, the distinction between a king and an Amir, because a king snatches from here and gives it here. Amma al-Amir, فَلَا يَأْخُذْ إِلَّا بِحَقٍّ وَلَا يَدَعَ إِلَّا فِي حَقٍّ. Amir takes that which is the due right of the state and places it in the right position. As for a king, فَيَعْصِفُ النَّاسِ. A king or a ruler, he oppresses people and they capture the land and say, well, the land belongs to us. And take it and then begin to take their whatever they want, they deserve that belongs to them. That's the distinction between a king and Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen is one that follows the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tries one's best to live as best as possible in close proximity of resembling as we began with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus you find that he was an individual, you find in his garment some 11, 12 patches in his clothing. You find that he had aswadan. He had 2 black threads, 2 black lines on his face. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen. From what? Kathratul buka. From excessive weeping. That was Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was no entourage. There was no charade. There was no 400 Cadillacs and planes flying in and bodyguards and civil private service, this, that and the other. He was just a normal individual that was walking around. And yet that simplicity took him many high places that he began to conquer and he began to rule because of that simplicity. That's amongst the most famous stories that have been attributed to him when the patriarch of Philistine, that you find the church there, or Masjid al-Aqsa, wanted to deliver the keys to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the Muslims. Some have mentioned that even inside their own scriptures is going to be the coming of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar al-Khattab. And then he consulted the companions of what should I do. They said it's best that you go there and you collect the keys yourself. So Umar al-Khattab goes out there to the land of Philistine to come and collect the keys. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story, but just to refresh our iman, and those younger brothers may have not heard the story, he travels with his servant. So the servant is riding, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is holding the rope, then they swap over, taking turns every hour, whatever it may be. So as they come close to Philistine, or about to enter into the city, the servant says, look, it's my turn to ride, but it's not going to look too good of going into Philistine that you are Amir al-Mu'mineen holding the rope. Umar can't care less. He says, you know what, just get back onto the beast and carry on riding. Your turn to ride, my turn to hold the beast. Don't make no difference to me. So they enter into the city. And this is a side point us young Muslims should learn in our life. It don't make no difference where you are as a Muslim. Because as companions, you fight at the front, you fight in the middle, you fight in the back. Wherever you are, you carry on fighting. As for some of us, if I'm at the front, I'll fight. As soon as my position is taken, or nobody looks up to me, well, I shouldn't help out anymore. No. Wherever you're placed, you carry on your journey. That's when you read through the seerah of many of the companions, wherever they were placed, they never hesitated. Because they weren't there for position. They weren't there for authority. They weren't there for dignity. They just carried on wherever they were placed. And that's what we need to do. Is wherever we are placed, carry on to the best of our ability. So now as he enters into Philistine, and the people come rushing to grab the feet of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's riding on the beast. But you know what? That's not Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen is holding the rope. He points, there he is, holding the rope. So they marvel, thinking this is a strange individual, walking in this manner. Then you find that one of the companions, if I'm not mistaken, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, or Abu Ubaidah, if I'm not mistaken, Jarrah, says to him, why don't you slightly tidy yourself up? You're coming in front of the leaders, you've got all patches on your clothing, you've got mud on your shin, and you're walking in this manner, tidy yourself up. Just like today you find these modernistic Muslims, trim your beard, wear a nice bowler hat when you go outside 10 Downing Street, learn how to hold a cup of tea, chai properly, when you're sitting with the Queen and cutting the knife and fork, go and learn these etiquettes. You find that amongst us Muslims. Forget about non-Muslims. Muslims come up and make these comments to us. When you come and you present yourself, because you don't look too good if you sit down and drink water, or if you start eating food with your hands. Isn't it? That's Muslims. That's why they come and make these comments to us. You're not going to look very good in front of them people. Who cares if we don't look very good in front of these people? Is that what our Islam is about? And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar said to him, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. Inside the Ustadh of Imam Hakim, we are people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us honor and dignity via Islam. If you seek it by any other means, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do what? Will disgrace you. Simple. We have been given honor and dignity via Islam. That's all of us. As the Quran mentions inside Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th chapter of the Quran, Alhamdulillah, الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who guided us to this, to Al-Islam. If we did not have Islam, then most of us, we don't know what we were doing inside our life. That is the ultimate blessing. That is the ultimate glory and the victory. That victory may not be apparent, but if that victory is inside your hearts, then you'll be successful wherever you go. As the Quran mentions, the believer, whether male or female, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِن, and that person believes and carries out righteous actions, فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا, will give that believer what? A good life. That believer will have a good life. That is what? Contentment inside the heart. That individual will be successful wherever they go. They'll always be successful inside their heart. That's the good life the Muslim is searching for. That's a good life that nearly, if not all the companions had that good life that bestowed upon these individuals. Likewise, you find that he used to do what? He used to carry a pot of water on his own shoulders. He needed to humble himself. And that's what you find out when he became Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he prayed, Allahumma inni shadid falayyani. Oh Allah, I'm harsh at times, so soften me. And at times I'm stingy, I'm not generous, so make me become a generous individual. Imagine this Amir al-Mu'mineen. And that's Anas ibn Malik. He narrates something very, very strange. Because sometimes people may be thinking, well, maybe he's doing that to encourage people, or he's trying to speak well of himself in front of the other companions. Anas ibn Malik, he mentions that one day I was sitting and there was a wall, a jidar between myself, and on the other side was Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar al-Khattab. So he didn't know I was there. And I heard him saying to himself, in fear Allah, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Umar al-Khattab, fear Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish you. No one was there, speaking to himself, advising himself. So he was one of those individuals vigilant about himself, about his life. That's why we should all as Muslims have moments inside our life that on our own, that being conscious regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because taqwa is not consciousness when we're in a blessed gathering like this, or inside the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa consciousness is when a person is all on your own. That the person overrides the evil thoughts, the perceptions, the desires, whatever it may be. Person remembers, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us wherever we happen to be, and is watching over all of us. That's real taqwa, consciousness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, for numerous good actions. Many of us, when we're studying the Arabic language and narrate all these beautiful stories about Amir al-Mu'mineen, they become textbooks at the moment, that you find that he's walking through the city at night, worried about his people, all the subjects underneath him. Not like today that you find people in a state of poverty, people in a state of need, etc. And he hears a woman complaining that there's no food, there's nothing for us to do, and the Amir is just sitting there enjoying his life, whatever it may be. So what does he do? He goes back to Baytul Mal, carries a big sack of wheat or barley. His companions say, let us carry it. No, leave it, I'll carry it myself. Brings it and presents it to the woman. And the woman cooks her food, and she said, if only we had people like you rather than Amir al-Mu'mineen sitting there doing nothing. The next day was what? Yawm al-Jum'ah. So all of a sudden, while giving the khutbah, heard a voice. Said, hey, I know that voice. Who's that giving the khutbah? That's who? Amir al-Mu'mineen. He didn't come and say, hey, listen, I'm Amir al-Mu'mineen. What are you complaining about? I'm giving you the wheat and the barley. Just walked away, finished. Khalas, lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, standing there once giving the khutbah, person stood up and said, فَلَا سَمْعَ وَلَا طَاعَ. No hearing, no obedience to you. We're not going to listen to you. This is unfair, this is unjust of what you've done. Said, what have I done? Every single individual has been given one piece of cloth. Who gave you the right to take two pieces of cloth and to make your garment? We're not going to hear and obey you. So what did Umar ibn Khattab do? He said to Ibn Umar, stand up. Stand up and explain to him. He said, that's right. Everybody got one piece of cloth. My father got one piece of cloth. I got one piece of cloth. But my father being a big individual, I took my piece of cloth, his piece of cloth, sewed it together, gave him his garment, and he gave it to him. So now the person says, carry on. Now we hear and we obey. Finish. And I had every right to question him. Where did you get that from? Today if you say, hey, where did you get any 50 billion riyals or dirhams or whatever it may be? Hey, don't ask us that question. We've always had that money. You've got no right to ask us. That wealth belongs to who? Belongs to the Muslims. That's why sometimes when they flick $1 million to the Panda Bay in London Zoo, whatever it may be, you know what that is? That's just simply like one of us flicking a penny. So don't think it's a big thing. Oh, that's a great cause. It's a great helping the Panda Bay in London Zoo. Don't mean anything. It's just like flicking a penny. One of you take a penny, throw it today. Don't mean anything. That's what it is for them. But they don't understand this is a great big trust placed upon them. That this title of being Amir al-Mu'mineen, being responsible, is a great big responsibility. And thus Umar al-Khattab, he took that responsibility seriously. That he even used to, if I'm not mistaken, mention some books of Sirah history, that he said that even if a Jewish man complains, that I'm responsible for that, because he's underneath my authority. So that's what it means to, that's what you find, a person shouldn't seek authority, shouldn't seek leadership. A person should be wary that every time a person is placed inside some form of leadership, there's great responsibility. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are a shepherd and has to be responsible for their flock. So we try to be in a minimal level. The more a person seeks any greater goal, it becomes more and more difficulties upon that individual. Likewise, we find about Umar al-Khattab that we find any other times of intuition being given to Ma'rakatul Qadisiyah. You read about this war, Ma'rakatul Qadisiyah, whereby you find that he went every day. He was anxious about what happened to the people, and come out every single day asking about them and coming back, till eventually that you find he shouted out to Sariya, Ya Sariya, Al-Jabal, Al-Jabal. And he said to one of the companions, come to the mountain, retreat inside the mountain. And Sariya heard his voice. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is where? Inside Medina. So that voice was traveled to him. This was a blessing. And this was a miracle that was bestowed. And that's when he came back, he said, I heard your voice saying to me, take retreat inside the mountain. Likewise, you find the river Nile throwing a message inside there. You need to humble itself, etc. These are all blessings that were given to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to such a degree that even you find that the death of Umar al-Khattab was a remarkable death, because he prayed that, oh Allah, give me any death in the blessed city of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he prayed that I want to die in this blessed land, rather than to die in a different land or different environment. And thus we find that this individual, this Magian, this fire worshipper, Abu Lu'lu al-Majusi, who threatened Umar al-Khattab, and then he eventually came and stabbed Umar al-Khattab, and they say poison was placed upon the dagger and stabbed him. And what did Umar say? Did he ask, was it a Muslim that harmed me? He said, no, it was a disbeliever, alhamdulillah. So that's how a Muslim should be. A Muslim should be one, that there should be no ill feeling. towards other Muslims. Yes, there's many fractions, many misunderstandings, whatever it may be, but a Muslim should keep an open heart towards other Muslims. That's what the Quran is mentioned. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. Oh Allah, place no rancor or ill feeling inside our hearts. Keep our hearts clean and pure towards our fellow brethren. And likewise, you find that eventually Al-Khattab is buried where? Beside the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was to be reserved by Aisha radiyallahu anha, but he quickly sent a message requesting that give me that location that I could be buried next to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus you find that this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because another famous hadith narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, also inside Sahih al-Bukhari, talk about the fadail of the companions. We want to conclude upon that inshallah. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, one day he decides to be the bawab, he decides to be the caretaker of a well, of an area. So on this occasion, you find the Prophet Muhammad enters, sits down on the well, and he sits on the well and he raises his garment to enjoy the cool breeze which comes from underneath the well, because the cold air and the water that's there, because immense heat in the Arabian Peninsula. So the first person who comes to the door is Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari walks back to the Prophet Muhammad and informs him that Abu Bakr is on the door. He says, إِذَنْ لَهُ وَبَشِّرْهُ بِالْجَنَّةِ. Give him glad tidings to enter, and give him permission to enter, give him glad tidings of paradise. Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu came and he sat on the right hand side of the Prophet Muhammad and he done exactly the same thing. He sat down and he dangled his legs down into the well and he lifted up his lower garment to enjoy the cool breeze. The next person who came on the door was who? Umar al-Khattab. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari asked, is Umar al-Khattab on the door? Can he enter? إِذَنْ لَهُ وَبَشِّرْهُ بِالْجَنَّةِ. Give him permission to enter and give him glad tidings of paradise. Umar came and he sat on the left hand side of the Prophet Muhammad and raised his lower garments and began to enjoy the cool breeze. The third person who came on the door was who? Uthman ibn Affan. And that will be inshallah next week's in discussion of a person who comes to discuss that. He enters, but before he enters, it said, إِذَنْ لَهُ. Give him glad tidings to enter. وَبَشِّرْهُ بِالْبَلْوَى تُصِيبُهُ. But give him glad tidings, he's going to face many calamities inside his life. So Uthman enters, there's no place to sit, neither on the right or the left. He sits directly in front of the Prophet Muhammad and he raises his lower garment, and you know what? He begins to do exactly the same thing. And remember, as we began with, these companions, they emulated every single thing about the Prophet Muhammad throughout their life. Every single thing, to the best of their ability, they would emulate him. The narrator of the hadith mentions Abu Bakr and Umar throughout their life are with who? With the Prophet Muhammad. And we narrate this as a sign that even when they die, they're going to be buried where? Beside the Prophet Muhammad. And likewise on the Day of Judgment, they'll be resurrected and be with who? With the Prophet Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all the tawfiq and ability to live a life of emulating, copying these companions, and to return back to meet many of the companions, to be with them, and even more so to go back and to be with the Prophet Muhammad, as he mentioned himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Mata alqa ikhwani. When will I meet my brothers? When will I meet my brothers? The companion said, Alasna ikhwana, are we not your brothers? He said, La, bal antum ashabi. No, you are my companions. So who are the brothers? He said, the brothers are those, alladina amanu bi, those who believed in me, but never ever saw me in their lives. That's who? That's all of us. We are all the brothers who are waiting to meet who? Return back and to meet the Prophet Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate that, make that easy for us inside this life, and even more so inside the akhirah, to return back and to be with the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li jami'il muslimin fastaghfiru innahu al-ghafurur rahim. Barakallahu feekum.